I spent some time with the DJI Action 5 Pro. I took it on the bike ride, just out on a day with a friend. It's pretty dope so far, a lot of cool features. I'm gonna put some on the screen right now with the settings I used. Really easy to handle, nice magnetic grips on the back, easy to maneuver, easy to get the files on and off too because of the internal storage. I didn't even have to tap into the SD card yet. I'm happy with that. We got a cool little package. It's small, fits everywhere. It's my first action camera, so I don't have a lot to compare it to. So far, I'm pleased with it. I got to see the files a little bit too on a screen and mess around with the colors. The D-Log profile is pretty decent. You're able to recover quite a bit more than if you just shot not in the D-Log profile. Stabilization, pretty good on this. It has the auto leveling horizon. Very cool, and you can shoot really wide as well. I'm pretty satisfied with this so far. I have a bunch of other tests I'm going to show you too. This is the audio test for the DJI Action 5 Pro. I'm holding it about an arm's length away. I'm not talking super loud. You can hear a little bit of traffic in the background and leaves blowing. Not a ton of wind, but how does this sound? And then here's a comparison shot between my Sony a7 IV and the DJI Action 5 Pro. My Sony is zoomed in a little bit as I was only able to go out to 16 millimeters, and the DJI is a bit wider. Next we have the stabilization Rocksteady Field of View Ultra Wide. You can see quite impressive dynamic range, no clouds in the sky, straight into the sun. You can still make out details in the shadows. Colors tend to pop really well, especially blues. You can see later on the blues might even have to be toned down. Here we have a Rocksteady Plus on the stabilization in a field of view of ultra wide. It's cropped in a little bit more as a bit more stabilization is applied. This is horizon balancing, where I was shaking the camera side to side and the horizon is staying locked. You can also see when you turn it past 90 degrees, the whole thing flips into a portrait orientation. This is stabilization off and ultra wide, and as you can see it's pretty rough, not having any stabilization, and it is very, very wide with quite a bit of distortion as well. This is auto tracking, where you shoot horizontally and statically and it automatically crops in and tracks you throughout the frame. Obviously not the highest quality video, but it works quite well and it's definitely usable, especially for like social media and those applications. This is 1080p 240 frames a second slow motion. Obviously the quality is reduced a little bit here, as you can probably tell. You can also do software slowing to make it even slower. This is fully auto settings, quite impressive dynamic range, as you can see the blue sky outside, and you can see all the details inside of this tent. You can also see how the colors pop quite vibrantly. If anything, the blues are a bit bright here for my liking. I like to tone it down a little bit, as it didn't look quite that blue in real life. This is probably how a lot of people are going to use it, straight out, where you don't have to mess with settings. You just click go and you're done, especially if you don't like doing a lot of post-processing to it. This is Rocksteady stabilization with the standard D-Warp. You get more accurate lines and less distortion, as you can kind of tell here. It's not quite as wide, but the architecture seems to be a bit more accurate. This is a picture test. You can zoom in, you can see quite a lot of detail. I'm gonna put the resolution on the screen right here. It's very wide field of view. You can shoot in RAW or in JPEG. Here in this picture, you can really see the details in the highlights up here, and also some details in the shadows, which is quite impressive for such a little camera. This is me at a thrift shop. Just if you use action cameras more for daily lifestyle type videos. I had this on a chest mount and I just kind of let it run so you can kind of see how it looks. It's sped up here, but you can kind of get a taste for how it does like indoors in like a shopping center. This is super night mode. It was pitch black down there in the thing, like you can really see it in real life, but you can clearly make out details. This doesn't look the best in my opinion. Compared to other action cameras, it seems to be doing all right. Compared to a mirrorless or DSLR, it's quite noticeably a bit worse. It's also a bit over sharpened. I find if you actually soften it just a hair, it looks a bit more realistic. Here's a very low light scene where it's just a campfire, and as you can see, it's picking up some detail, but it's still overall very dark. These are all on auto settings, so you can manually change exposure to get a bit more details in the flame. These are all the accessories I was using. It's from Newer. I just got a kit. It was like 20 something bucks off Amazon. Here we have more action shots of me on a little bike trail. It is quite bouncy. I don't have any suspension on my bike, and this is right on the handlebars. It is picking up a lot of little micro vibrations and jitters, but it's doing quite a good job mitigating those. On the second clip, I have the rock steady stabilization with the ultra wide field of view, but you can see it looks quite smooth, and this was a pretty bumpy ride. I'm going up and down on these bunch of little roots and twigs and whatever else was on the ground there. All right, this next clip is horizon balancing, the ultra wide field of view. You can see a little bit of the stabilization like artifacts in some of the clips. And then in the next clip we have here, it's completely auto settings, normal 10-bit, so this has not been converted to Rec 709 from the D-Log. This is as auto as you can get. All these test shots were taken before the firmware update, so these are all in the lower bit rate, but with the firmware I will have shots at the end comparing the lower bit rate to the higher bit rate to see how it looks. I'm holding the camera out with my hand and I'm quite shaky, but it is doing a great job stabilizing it. Genuinely impressed by that. The skin tones and the colors, they look very vibrant, very saturated and punchy. Finally, this last shot I have here, this is Rocksteady Plus, ultra wide, normal 10-bit. So this is the same as the last shot, just with the Rocksteady Plus. It should be a bit more stable. This is how I had it rigged up to my bike. I had it on the handlebar here with another adapter to turn it 90 degrees so that I can shoot forward. Next, we're testing the bit rate. Make sure you updated your firmware to the latest version, and then you can change that in settings to the high bit rate option. Next, I have a very highly pushed grade. They were graded exactly the same, so you can see how the colors handle on both settings. Next is a very zoomed in screen grab from each video. Next are some samples going between the regular and the high bitrate options. It's not a perfect example as there were clouds in the sky and it was on fully auto settings, so the exposure is changing a bit. So this is not a perfect test by any means, but you might be able to also spot some differences.
All right, we're gonna go over some pros and cons. Some pros first, really quick. The screen, it's very nice, very bright. It's an OLED and has a very good response to it. Next we have the size and the form factor. I really liked it. It's very compact and it fits in my pocket quite nicely. Next is the boot up time. It is quick. I mean, from completely powered off to recording. Now, okay, that's how long it took. That's really fast. Another pro is that there is a plethora of shooting options. There's a lot of ways you can use this particular camera. I will go over all these features shortly. The next pro is impressive image quality in challenging situations. Next is cons. One is the fully auto settings can look a little bit too HDR and a bit too processed for my taste. However, that can be remedied by shooting it in D-Log and then grading it yourself. Next is the low light capabilities leave a lot to be desired, and it tends to be over sharpened and give it a look that I'm not a fan of personally. And the last con is that there's no 35mm screw adapter on the camera body. You can buy separate adapters so that you can put them on tripods you already have. But it would be nice to have that included in the body. As for features, you can connect two DJI mics. It records one mic off the left audio channel and the other mic off the right audio channel. So be sure to separate that in post if that is a route you're going to go with. Next is an underrated feature. It's loop recording and pre-record. Loop record continuously records and overwrites the storage once it's full. That is very useful as a dash cam option if you're riding a bike, a motorcycle, or even for your car. Next is pre-record, where you can predetermine how long it records for before you hit the record button. So let's say you have it set on 30 seconds and you miss action and then you hit it, it's going to capture the 30 seconds before and include that in the clip, which is very useful if you're shooting wildlife or any very unpredictable events. Next is timer shooting. This is a really cool feature where you can set a time on it, leave it wherever you want, and then when it hits that time, it starts recording for as long as you set it for. That can be very useful for day to night time lapses or leaving the camera in certain areas where you're not allowed to go to during certain hours. Very cool feature. You can use the camera to live stream directly through the DJI Mimo app. It's available to stream through Facebook, YouTube, and Bilibili. The next feature I want to talk about is the voice control feature, where you can just say start recording and then it starts recording. It's very useful for if you have it rigged somewhere where it's not easy to get to and you don't want it to be recording for a long time before you're actually ready for it to start recording. The next feature I want to talk about is the app. It works very well, and I even did a little bit of video editing to see how it works in the app, and it was quite intuitive and surprisingly useful. I usually edit on a PC, but I was surprised that you can get quite a bit done just on your phone. So overall, those are my thoughts on the DJI Action 5 Pro. I do like this camera and I will be using it a lot more in the future for my other projects. I do recommend you take a look at this if you're in the market for an action camera.